We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft services.
Hey, Trent.
Hi, Parth.
Good to see you.
You too.
You're looking well.
You too. What have you been eating?
Well, thank you for asking. My friends and my good friend Sophia's friends from college came over for a, quote, girls' night. Me and my other roommate, Tom, were relegated to our own boys' night, but now all the girls slept over, and then this morning, it is October 18th, and they're going to a No Kings protest, which I'm not going to because we had to record this and then I had a meeting. But because of that, Sophia went to Dunkin', got everybody a box of hot chocolate Joe.
Those are the best.
Yes. And then also got herself a sausage, egg, and cheese, but couldn't finish her sausage, egg, and cheese. So I ate it. And I believe it was on an English muffin.
Do you remember like being in elementary school and it'd be like the Christmas party and the teacher would bring in the hot chocolate box of Joe? And it always tasted like absolute heaven. And then I would be like, Mom, let's get a hot chocolate from Dunkin' Donuts. And it always tastes like crap. And it took me like 20 years to realize they must use something different and much better for the box of Joe.
That's interesting.
Something to think about. Parth, it must have been, as much as we both support the cause, poor you that you had. It's like, isn't it the best when there's something that you only kind of want to go to or don't want to go to, and then you have actual work plans, and you're like, oh no, I have work. Ugh, I wish I could go. I wish.
I did actually want to go to this. Sophia's mom came and Sophia's brother came. Last night, all of the girls were designing posters and stuff, so they made like No Kings posters and, you know, whatnot. Democracy posters.
So I have to ask, was the boys' night, girls' night separation a hard line? Or
what happened was the girls went to...
Of girls' night.
Of girls' night. I mean, I live in Highland Park, which is very near New Brunswick, where you and I went to college. The girls went to Fat Cactus, and I dropped them off there because they were going to have drinks. And then I came back, and Tom, my roommate, was like, well, we should go out for dinner. And I was like, yeah. And so then I was like,
Parth, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Exactly. And so then I was like, hey, let's go to Jin Soy, which is right across from Fat Cactus, which is the Indo-Thai fusion restaurant. And I had chili paneer, and he got like a green chicken curry.
Oh, what I can say about Fat Cactus and why I had a strong reaction when you mentioned it is because that's what I joke, a cursed restaurant for me. Because one time, the first time I went there, I drank a pina colada and I threw up. And the second time there, while seated, I found out someone I knew had killed themselves.
Oh my God.
For those two reasons, the Fat Cactus, I shall never return.
Wow.
I hope the girls had a great girls' night.
They did. What about you? What have you been eating?
I think we set a new record recording-wise in the way that I was unconscious about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised. Usually it takes you, I mean, no offense, it just usually takes you a little bit longer to be in a talking mood the way you are right now. I'm sort of impressed with your ability to suddenly become loquacious.
Don't even know what that word means. It's because we were supposed to record at 11:30 and I woke up at like
11:15, but yeah.
Yeah, and I woke up at like 11:32 and you called me and I heard your voice, and it was the first voice I heard while being awake today. And I just knew, like, if I don't kick it into high gear really quick, Parth's not going to be happy.
You have good instincts, Trent. You just have great... That's what I love about you.
So, just letting you know, I looked at myself in the mirror, I slapped myself in the face, and I said, it's showtime.
Which it kind of is, because right about now is where I'd probably cue the intro.
But Parth, here's a problem. Here's the little problem with your plan. What has Trent been eating?
Oh, fuck, you're right. What have you been eating?
Has that guy
let's get into it, Trent. We're 6
What
minutes
has
in.
he been up to? Here's the problem. I just woke up. Last night, cheeseburger. Cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film where they talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week is part 2 with cinematographer
Kira Kelly. She's here to talk about her work on Justin Tipping's film, Him.
Parth. Listening to the part 1 intro, unfortunately I wasn't able to make it.
Yeah, Trent's been working like a dog, day and night.
I'm a bit busier than usual working on a reality show. That's all I can say. That's all I can say right now. I was pleased to hear the episode come out, and with your good friend Sophia.
Yes.
And while I was remembering that opening spiel, I remembered Sophia just off the cuff just knocked out the opening spiel. And I know she's been around for a while, but I'm the host of the show, and sometimes it gets a little hazy. So good for her.
I'm always very impressed with her ability to remember it. She's not even really a listener of the pod all that much, which is a great thing about very good friends.
Yeah, that's what has kept your friendship going all these years. But this week, part 2, Kira Kelly. Him.
Yes.
Him! So Parth,
Trent has been texting me, or was this what you were about to say?
Well, you say your bit, and then I'll say my bit.
Well, Trent will just occasionally text me, I'm him! Him in all caps, exclamation point.
And this whole week or week and a half at work, it has been my big joke. And mostly me and just this one other guy find it funny, but basically in any scenario, I'll move the mic a bit further away. I'm him! I'm him! I do that like 2 or 3 times a day to mixed reviews.
That's how you know, like, you're a true comedian, is when you no longer care whether the other people are laughing or not. But it's funny to you.
It helps when that one guy kind of laughs.
Well, you're like, this is a good joke.
But the staying power of him, there are a bunch of things I like about the look of the movie. I enjoyed myself. Swift little 96-minute runtime. Think something like that. Thank you. But that has, I think that will stay with me. I don't know if that was in the vocabulary as much before, or if this just sort of highlighted it.
Well, I'm hoping that, for you, I'm him is the staying power of this movie. I'm hoping this interview that we've got with Kira Kelly, part two especially, is going to be staying with the audience, and I kind of want to let them hear it.
Let the people hear it. Do you hear the people podding the songs of...
Okay. Cue the interview.
So how long was the shoot all in all, and was it all based out of one city, or did you jump around?
The shoot was 30 days, and it was all mainly around Albuquerque, New Mexico, with the exception of that Truth or Consequences shoot day. It was all out of Albuquerque.
Can you talk about that fight scene between Isaiah and Cam, sort of towards the end, which, gets pretty intense, and then there's the camera shake. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, we always knew that, like, the film room fight, I don't know, for me, it kind of felt like the climax of just everything. It's like, that's where Cam ends up learning all the lore and the history and what this actual ritual is. And so color-wise, I knew that Justin wanted to keep the Savior's Party this red. And with the Savior's Party, we did like a deep red, but with like very like amber and yellow accents. So for the film room fight, I wanted it to have this sort of red, but I also just wanted to feel like it needed to feel like anger and rage in that space. And so I found this funky combination of like this fuchsia and like this pink with this red that we kind of pulsed throughout that scene. And so we already knew that we had that base. It was like super saturated. And then, it was something where we had planned in prep. I think it was one of those conversations with Justin. He's like, wouldn't it be great if we could just have the camera just be just as much a part of that rage as what these guys were experiencing? And so I was like, how do I do that? Let me think about this whole thing. And so then I ended up finding these image shakers that basically it's a filter. It's more than a filter, but it's this setup that you put on the front of the lens, and you can change, there's liquid inside of it, and you can change basically the setting of like the left to right shake and then the up and down shake. And then you find that sweet spot, and then that's what you use for the film.
That's an in-camera shake? Like that's not altered at all in post, or like that's completely in camera?
That's completely in camera with these image shakers, and you put it on. I guess it's not a filter. I guess you could make it. It's almost looks like a matte box, but it's totally circular. And so but there's different dials, like degrees, that you can either turn it up or turn it down. And, so we found that in the camera test, and Justin loved it. And I remember when we brought it to set, like with the combination of like this like fuchsia lighting and all this stuff, we were finding the set, how much shake we wanted for that scene. And I remember looking at Justin, I was like, is this too much? Is this is this too much shake? And he just looked at me and he was like, more. It's like this thing of like, just, pushing it in this really fun way. So yeah, that's all in camera. And that was the thing for me. It was, this wonderful, scary thing of like, cause there was no coming back from that. You can't correct any of that out in post and later. So I just loved that about Justin, where he was just like, no more, let's not. I really loved working with him in a way of like, there was no option to play it safe. It was just very much like, this is the choice. We're leaning into this, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, image shakers.
With the Savior's Party, I think it was, an element I thought was really cool was how it has like the really unassuming outside, and then you walk in, and then, it's a huge space. Can you talk about either blending those two spaces, or was it a real space, or how'd you make that happen?
Yeah, that was the Shiners Temple in Albuquerque, and the outside really does look like that. They have like some old, I guess they had a toy train outside from like an old festival or something, and we kept that because it was so weird. And so yeah, that exterior is that place, and so we were able to do that like steady cam move in from the outside and then bring them into the party, because the room where the party's in is kind of like their temple. And so we were able to rig all of these like moving lights in there, and Bob, our gaffer, it was a really fun lighting setup that we were able to move from, okay, this is the party before he takes the drink, or before he, has the red stuff. And then we wanted to play with having these moving lights come down. Like at that point, everything was like a triangle that kind of went parallel with the ceiling itself of the space. And then once he has that, there's like this whole transition where we had just these white lights then come straight down, like the ceiling kind of closing in on him. And then that's where we kind of went to this more, spotlight feel on him with like red accents in the background. But yeah, that place was a real spot. We ended up, I forget how many days, I think that ended up being like two or 3 days there. But yeah, that's what I think with Justin, that was important for him, for us to be able to do that oneer, to kind of show the outside and then like bring us right into that space.
I guess finishing up sort of specific scenes, can you talk about that final, like the bloody climax of it all at the end?
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that?
Yeah. So we, we knew that was going to be, we're coming from like this fight that happens in this the red room or magenta room. And I wanted it to kind of feel like you're stepping outside for the first time, and it kind of takes your eyes a moment to adjust. So, cause we also hadn't been daylight exterior for a few days, within the story. And so really kind of having Cam, come out into this like blinding light, but then also into this space, it was just like, what the fuck is going? So we really wanted that place just to feel like if we had created a lot of like the compositional rules, like that was the place where it was just like, we went even more overboard of just like, everything is straight on. Like, there's no real side angles except for, I think one, actually after he starts killing everybody, that breaks off into this crazy sort of gonzo handheld world. But yeah, we wanted it to feel super rigid, and like this is part of a ritual that this group of people take very seriously. And it was that was a whole fun and super challenging day, because we were days. We were again like shooting in Albuquerque in March, which is super windy, and we were on this field that we couldn't, we weren't allowed to bring condors onto the field, so there was no option of fly swatters or anything like that to control the light. We couldn't nail down into the field, to kind of hold some of our stuff down. So it was really like a fun puzzle of trying to shoot out directions and figure out where we could be for each time of day. So we were out of like the super toppy light. But yeah, that whole sequence was, for me, like as far as the cinematography, really wanted it to feel like super, like, rigid for him, and then just kind of play with this, this one lens that we ended up using pretty much throughout, but to almost like, I think it's the only lens we use in that sequence, which was like this MAP 55, which everything kind of falls off on the sides, and really just kind of put ourselves into Cam's head.
Are there any scenes you recall shooting that have been deleted or didn't end up in the final film?
Yeah, yes, there's definitely a few, not too many, but there's like one of my favorite ones was this one where Isaiah is almost like in an MRI, but it's like this totally weird version of an MRI. So it was like this close up of him in this really dark space, and I had like a 360 an Arri 360 lighting him with some like really blue light here, and then we put together these two G3 Lecos to make like really skinny X mark, a red light X mark on his face. It's almost like feeling like a brain scan. And we put that on a moving rig above him. So we were able to take this red X mark and kind of track it all down his face really slowly. And then like Marlon just had like a beautiful performance in that one. I think, Justin led him to like a really great place as far as like, just sad performance in that space. That was one of my favorites that I don't think it ended up fitting with what, the final film, but that one was a really fun one to play with, and just kind of play with like this X moving across like the landscape of someone's face. And yeah, there was a few other scenes that didn't make it in, but.
Do you have a favorite shot or sequence in the film from a DP perspective, and a most difficult sequence that you had to shoot? And they can be the same or they can be different ones.
Yeah, I think my favorite is not the most difficult. It was actually one of the most, I wouldn't say easy, but it was the most chill. I guess I don't want to say basic either, but it's the scene where Cam, he is in that hallway I was telling you about, the gallery hallway that was on location, and it's at night and he's calling his mom. He like sneaks to the phone and calls his mother. And, that space, Jordan Ferrer, the production designer, had to make these, he had to plug the walls because it was like open space and all that stuff. So he used this plug that was like this circular window that matched the exterior of the spaceport, the exterior that we were using. And, I just remember I shined this, like, it ended up being like a 20K Fresnel through this circle. And it just made this beautiful oblong shape on the back wall, this blue circle on the back wall. And the phone is kind of like right in the middle of it. And it's just Cam standing there, trying, like, just so sadly reaching out to his mother, trying to get any sort of lifeline to the outside world. And his mom's at her birthday party. It's all fun on that end. And I just remember like feeling, just loving how it looked, loving how it felt, just how lonely and kind of sad that ended up being. So that's definitely one of my favorites. And then technically, I don't know that, like, I think that anything that had to do with the FLIR camera, the thermal camera, was the hardest technically. And then we had so many other rigs that were hard to figure out, and like trying to figure out how to move the camera in these certain ways. But I think for me, I just loved, my favorite sets in that film are the recovery room, because I really ended up spending a lot of time in prep trying to map out what the colors meant for Cam in those moments, like from that conversation I was telling you about with Justin as far as Cam's descent. And really playing with what kind of light we put on him. And so it's like, for example, when he's in the hyperbaric chamber and he's, asking Isaiah all about like fame and all this stuff, this like really gorgeous, nasty green on him that was like filled in with blue. Like that one was something that I, just loved also. And I'm trying to think of the most difficult. There were challenges with every day and all of it. But there were challenges that was like, it all just kind of felt like a big team effort. And I had such a great crew, and a director that was like pushing us all toward our best and toward like, just really thinking out of the box, which, I think of any film, this is like definitely of any film I've worked on, this is the most out of the box and just most just like, yeah, just creative visually. And I think that was something that we all were able to be, get on board with.
In the, like, with the cool violence and bloody elements, can you just talk about how much of that is, makeup and stunts and practical, and how much is additional VFX help?
This is something that I remember learning early on with Monkey Paw, our great producer from Monkey Paw, Ian Cooper, who was with us the whole time. Ian hated VFX blood. And it was one of those things of like, it never looks right. We never, so we really pushed ourselves like to like do as much blood practically as we can. And we had a really incredible especially makeup team led by Anthony Kozar, who made all the craziest rigs, and just like the blood that he had was great. And, I remember, for example, this like, when Julia Fox stabs herself in the neck at the end, there like this rig that he made, the knife itself, the handle of the knife was only like a few ounces long, so it could stay there with, I hope I'm not giving away all of his secrets, but like, so it could stay there with that, like with magnets. So that was like a real thing coming out of her neck. Like he was just like a real wizard as far as like being able to create these rigs. And so, yeah, there was a lot of blood on set. I have a lot of sneakers that were ruined. But yeah, we definitely leaned into all of that. One of my favorite sequences or shots of the film was something that was so like not planned for. It was at the end, in that end fight with like Cam and Isaiah. And, it was always planned that, Cam was going to take the helmet and hit Isaiah with the helmet. But that moment when Cam just kind of reaches up and then the helmet starts to glow and it's like this whole like sort of presence thing, that was something where on the day Justin was like, wouldn't it be cool? If the helmet started to glow. And I remember looking at my gaffer, Bob, and I was just like, do you have anything to put in the helmet? And he's like, yes. And so Bob like brought this like, I forget what he ended up using even, but it was that moment of like, having it just sort of glow. And then at the end, when Isaiah dies, it kind of like flickers out. Well, that's spoiler, I guess, but, it kind of flickers out at the end. But that was a lot of our work on this, of just like, trying to add and, already having like a plan, but add as much as we could to, just heighten things on the day.
Is there a major takeaway from working on this film that you think you're going to take into any future projects that you end up doing?
Yeah, I think there's more than a few. I've always known I really am somebody who loves prep. I love like the plans. I love trying to, it's a time where you kind of get to pretend and, make up all these rules for yourself and rules for the visuals. And so I think for me, it was just more of like, I did a lot of color work in this one that I hadn't really done in a while. And so I was really excited. That's something that's like that I want to play with more and have fun with more, and I think for this film, we were lucky in that Justin was not very interested in overcovering anything. A lot of it was like, okay, no, this is from Cam's POV. This is the shot we need of him. And then maybe there's one more shot that we need to tell this story. So it was like really lovely to play in a world where it wasn't like, okay, everybody gets a close up and we have to work our way around this room. It was like very freeing in that way. And it was great because Monkey Paw, like nobody, it's one of those things where you start shooting and you're like, oh gosh, like everyone's watching the dailies. Are they going to ask for more coverage and all that stuff? There was never a peep about it. And it was like very freeing to kind of work in that world where they really, trusted Justin and trusted us. But yeah, for me, it's like this film that, it was the least precious I was about the lighting going into it. And as a result, it's seriously one of the films I'm most proud of, lighting wise. I mean, there was some place in the beginning where I was just like, no, I don't need to fill them in. I don't need to, if they get an eye light, it's like a series of X's in their eyes or something like that. It was definitely, it felt very like a freeing creative process for me, which was fun.
The reason we reached out to talk to you is because we liked the look of the film in the trailer so much, and we were just wondering what was sort of the look you were hoping to achieve, or what were some of your priorities in how you approached the look?
Some of the priorities were, a lot of it was like the composition. Definitely, making this sort of like very static or stoic, I guess, like center punched feel. Justin in the beginning, he showed me this photographer named Gabriel Moses, who's just incredible. And his work is like, it's like a top light and like, but with skin tones that are really sort of like almost metallic in some way, like very like sheeny in the highlights. And that was something that I used, like, when we were building the LUT, to really sort of lean into that feel. And so, yeah, I know it was something where, the film is very, it has a lot of contrast and feel in it. And then as far as the composition, really kind of changes throughout the story. Yeah, and it was something where I really wanted to be able to play again with color, composition, and really make sure that as a cinematographer, it's like something that I end up loving. Like this is how I end up judging my work. And it's like sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed. But I love the idea that if somebody could watch this film on mute, and maybe like, obviously the music's incredible, like, the script, like the dialogue, that's all wonderful. But like as a DP, it's just like, how do I make sure that I can show the story with the visuals, like is the story coming through with the composition? Is the story coming through with the color contrast that's happening here? And so, yeah, I feel like for me, that was always the challenge. And this one was a fun one to play with because we did really set for ourselves a lot of, for lack of a better word, rules to how the story should be told. And it was something that we were able to kind of like, to play with throughout. I'm
sure you've heard of the famous Steven Soderbergh put Raiders of the Lost Ark in black and white and took the sound out. And he's like, because the blocking is so great, the movie makes perfect sense.
I knew that it was black and white. I didn't know that he took the sound out too. That's
Did he
great.
put like the Social Network score over
and
it
he added the Social Network score and took out all the dialogue. Yeah. It's really, look it up if you want.
I
just on his website.
Yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like that's such a treat. Like, this is and again, like, this has nothing to do with my sound brothers and sisters, like nothing, it's nothing like that, but it's more of like, this is a visual, medium that's been told for so long just with images. And then, yes, also images with great music, like somebody on the organ or something. And I feel like we really, or at least I try to push myself of like, how do you kind of make it go back to that sort of feel? Like without, just making sure that we're showing the story. And that's where the excitement is, I think. And I think that's like, a lot of times you can get into a lot of things that are just ends up being like, shot, reverse shot, which, I've seen a lot of great movies that do have that, but then it's like, what subtle changes are they making within that shot, reverse shot? When do you go for the close up? When do you cross the line? And stuff like that, I think is like fun as a filmmaker to play with this language that, we've been playing with for over 100 years.
So as we start to wrap out, are you working on anything that you're able to talk about?
Yeah, I just wrapped this movie this summer called Misty Green that Chris Rock wrote and directed and is in, and very different than him, but also just like a really great time. Like Chris is amazing. And that was something we got to shoot in LA, which was like kind of like a minor miracle. So yeah, that was a fun one to do this summer. And then, yeah, just kind of figuring out what next steps are.
Parth, you think it's time for the Big Kahuna final question?
The wave's crashing, Trent. Let's do it.
So the Big Kahuna final question is, what is the last great film you watched? And our only criteria is it has to be great. It can't just be good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm trying to figure out, like, I've been watching a lot of fun movies lately. I'm going to take one and then go together. So I watched The Thing. I think it was
first time or rewatch?
No, I'd seen it before, but I think I had seen it like in college stoned or something. I don't know. I didn't really watch it.
Us too.
Yes, exactly. Oh wow!
Yeah, I've got the Blu-ray over here.
There's so much like film students love The Thing right now. It's
like I watched it the other day and I was like, oh my god, this is really great. But then I don't think that I watched it and I was like, oh, it reminded me so much of Alien, or Alien reminded me so much of The Thing and all the things. So then I watched Alien like the day after that, and I was just sitting there just like, oh my God, this is so amazing also. And it's one of those things where it's just like you can see, I love the fact that you can see all of the, you can see it's a puppet. You can see that it's just all these things, but it does not take you out at all. And I just love all the tension. And so then obviously the next day I watch Aliens, which is like a whole different, so now I'm giving you 3 in my progression of like the last week of what I've been watching. And it's been awesome. You're just kind of like on a fun little trip. So yeah, but the thing tipped that all off.
Well, thank you so much to Kira Kelly. She's the DP of Justin Tipping's new film, Him. It's in theaters. I just saw it this morning. Go check it out on as big a screen as possible. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Did you not like my Les Mis thing?
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you on the air so I could get a genuine reaction. So you
Sure.
could just dodge the question.
No, it was great. But who was actually great was Kira Kelly. Thank you so
Wait.
much for coming on the show.
The DP of Him, Kira Kelly, part 2 interview.
I would say I'm him, but really I should be saying she's him. You know what I mean? Because
She's him. I'm with her.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, both those things are true.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
She did a great job DPing the movie. Super pretty movie that we enjoyed the look of, and talking with her about the look of, and about specific scenes from the movie. You guys know. You just listen to part 2 of the interview. You know better than anyone. You probably know better than Parth and I.
Thank you so much to Kira Kelly for coming on the show. We really appreciate her time and for her team for making it all happen. And thank you to the listener for listening to these episodes, of which there will be one next week, as these episodes, as you know, come out every week on Sundays on all your major podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, etc.
At 5 a.m.
At 5 a.m. EST.
Why was that decision made? Just curious.
I think there was another podcast that I listened to, and I noticed that their episodes always came out at 5 a.m., and I was like, well, sure, I guess.
Imitation's the highest form of flattery.
Exactly.
Then, no matter if you're a deadbeat fuck like me who was waking up at 11:30, or you have an actual job and you
You'll
wake
be
up
ready
at
Sunday mornings.
yeah, you're ready. Or I guess it's Sunday, so I don't know a job.
Hey,
if
some
you're
people work Sundays. I work Sundays.
a pastor or something, if you work at a church and you need to wake up to
Craft
molest a
services
kid,
is the way to go.
to
Oh,
molest a kid
okay.
super early, you can
oh my
listen to
God.
this on your way to work.
We'll see if that stays in. Well, Trent, next week's episode. It's a cool episode. You weren't there for it.
I'm not trying to make this a habit. This is the 3rd ever interview
No Trent interview. Yeah.
I was not present for. The intros and outros, that's fine. It happens.
I
But
think
the-
shit happens.
But the interviews, I like to be
they're
there.
sacred.
I like to be there in the thick of it with my boy
And to be
Parth.
fair to you, we've been there. We've been doing. This is like our 254th interview or episode or something like that. But next week is something very, very cool. There's a movie that's coming out for you actually next week that we got to talk to the director of. This is the second ever writer-director that we were able to talk to. The first one, of course, being Evan Morgan for The Kid Detective.
Enjoyed that.
It was a really good interview and a good movie. And our episode for next week is also, if I do say so myself, a pretty good interview and a very good movie. We're talking to writer-director Chris Stuckman about his movie Shelby Oaks. Trent, did you know this is the highest funded horror movie to be funded on Kickstarter?
Well, now I do.
It garnered $1.3 million in donations.
And he is a
He's a film
a
reviewer on
YouTuber.
YouTuber. Yeah.
Cool. And he has a big following, I understand.
Yeah, he's got like 2 million subscribers. I was one of them. I used to, or I am one of them. I used to watch his videos when I was as young as like 10 or 11, something like that. So it was.
Did you nerd out, or do you?
No, I saved the nerding out for off the air afterwards, which I try to because I don't want to come off like a dumb fuck at the beginning. But yeah, he was super cool, and can't wait for you guys to hear that interview next week.
It'll be unique in the way where we just only had a limited amount of time with him, so it'll just be a one and done interview, guys.
Yeah, it's only no parts. Just the
no
whole
part
thing.
2. We only have tonight. We only have next Sunday at 5 a.m.
Anyways, as said, you can check us out on all major podcasting platforms, and you can be updated with us on social media on Instagram and Twitter. Trent, I gotta head out to a meeting, so are we ready?
Parth, before you do, just quickly rate us 5 stars on all your platforms.
Please.
Tell a friend, tell your parents, tell your brother, your sister, or whoever. Scream it from the rooftops.
Please.
Craft Services Podcast. That's all. Parth's got to go.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.